Hello, this is Mark, and I'm coming at you with part one of the signs of heaven. All right, with the sun and the moon gives. Okay, it's very important for you to understand that the Lord did not intend us to physically to observe the signs of heaven. He did not lay it up like that. That is dealing too much with sorcery and astrology. That was not God's intention. God's intention has always been the sure thing. God is not going to tell us to do something as far as observing these things and then tell us it's a warning to do these things. Such as if you read Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, chapter 45, I believe, Isaiah chapter 47, verses 11 through verse 14. Please read that. And the Lord was letting them see you do not observe these things. And I actually read it for you real quick. And I'm reading out New American Standard. And in chapter 11 it says, "But evil will come on you, which you will not know how to charm away, and disaster will fall on you, for which you cannot atone, and destruction about which you do not know will come on you suddenly. Stand fast now in your spells and in your many sorceries, with which you have labored from your youth. Perhaps you will be able to profit. Perhaps you may cause trembling. You are weary with your many counsels. Let now the astrologers, those who prophesy by the stars, those who predict by the new moons, stand up and save you from what will come upon you. Behold, they have become like stubble. Fire burns them. They cannot deliver themselves from the power of the flame." So God did not intended them to be led by sorcerers, all right, or the observant astrologers into these things. He said that they will become like stubble, burnt by the flame. All right. It was not. God has always had his true prophets to lead them and guide them by the true signs. All right. And God has always did it in that language to guide his people by the language of the Spirit. And I know a lot of people don't understand that the Bible is actually written from the book of Revelations to the book of Genesis, and all in the middle of these books, 66 books, the language of the Spirit, and we don't even realize it. So I'm letting you see, if the end of the book, which is Revelation, is letting you see that it's written in the language of the Spirit, that which is in dreams and visions, and when I say language of the Spirit, by which the Spirit communicates it, then that means the front Genesis is also written in that same language, and I'm telling you, it is smeared. That language is smeared all in the book, from all the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, Joel, Hosea, all those prophets. A lot of people like to think that 1/3 of this book is written in prophetic form. However, I'm telling you that is incorrect. That it's 2/3, at least 2/3 of this book is written in the language by which the Spirit communicates. 2/3 of it. And maybe 1/3 you can take literal. If God, just think now, if God is a spirit, he's going to communicate in that language by which the Spirit communicates. And he is showing us that it's in the language of dreams and visions. All right. When the Lord came, he spoke. It says that without a parable, he did not even speak or open his mouth. That because the Lord was speaking in the language of dreams and visions. which is communicated through the Spirit. Parables are in that language. All right, that's what parables are. They speak in a language by which is unimaginable to the mind and to the conscience. God is so multi-phased and on so many multi-levels. The only way that he can express himself to us is in a language that is unimaginable to our conscience. I mean, it's so much to him that he just can't tell you literal for you to get you to see him. He has to express it to you on so many facets and so many levels for you to see who he is. All right. So let's see right now that the language that we are referring to is that language of the Spirit. All right. It's the only way that we can see the signs of the heavens. All right. So let's see this right now. Let's go to Job. Let's go to the book of Acts, chapter 2. And this is the day of Pentecost, where Peter stands up in the book of Acts, where the Holy Ghost has come upon the people. And Peter stands up, and they said these people are filled with wine. And Peter tell them no. And they noticed that these people were speaking in speaking in tongues. And they call them men of unlearned. So that means they did not know their language, yet these people were speaking in all these various different cultures and languages. So listen what Peter says. This is Acts chapter 2, starting with, say, verse 16. But this is what was spoken of through the prophet Joel. And if you want to see that, that's Joel chapter 2. And it shall be in the last days, God said that I will pour forth my spirit on all mankind, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even on my bond slaves, both men and women, I will in those days pour forth my spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will grant wonders in the sky above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun will be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and glorious day of the Lord shall come. And it shall be that everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. So listen to this. Peter just spoke and said, he just said that in the last days that the Lord will pour his spirit out on all flesh. And that what's the sign? Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Then he says your old men shall dream dreams and your young men shall see visions. So what is the connection of all this? The dreaming dreams and seeing visions. He's saying in seeing the dreams and seeing the visions, you're actually prophesying in that language. If you learn how to speak it, you're actually prophesying in that language. And seeing, because only in the dreams and visions do you see the thoughts and plans of God. God is letting us see, if you learn how to interpret your dreams and visions in them, God will actually show you the plans and purposes of God. That's why Nebuchadnezzar had them. Even the pharaohs had them. Daniel had them. The prophets. If you learn how to interpret dreams and visions, you will see the whole plan of God. laid out before you. This is why you won't be deceived in the last days. This is also why God did not lay it out physically in the sun and the moon and the stars. And I'm going to show you what the sun and the moon and the stars were. All right. So we're not just chasing like astronomers and sorcerers after the physical sun, moon, and stars. All right. And so let's continue, because he says, and he will pour his spirit out on the bond servants, both the males and the females. And what again? And they will prophesy. So this, and seeing the dreams and the visions, this is the language by which the spirit communicates. And if you speak that language, you're actually prophesying. You're actually prophesying. And then he breaks it down even further. And he says, verse 19, he said, I will grant wonders. Listen, in the sky above and signs on the earth below. Blood and blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun will be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and glorious day of the Lord. So, in other words, for you to understand the dreams and visions, only in that language of dreams and visions will you understand the prophetic of the sun, and the sun being turned to darkness and the moon turned to blood before his great and glorious day of the Lord. So all that is connected in dreams and visions. The Lord has told us that it's only in that language by which the spirit communicates can you see the moon and the stars. See the sun turn to darkness and the moon into blood. That's the only way. It's in that language by which the spirit communicates it, and the spirit speaks it in that language of dreams and visions. Okay, so I thought it was very important for me to lay that foundation down for you. We do not go physically searching for the moon and the stars. So let's continue on. So now let's go to John chapter 1. So we can see the day. All right. Because it's very important that we start seeing these signs. All right. So John chapter 1. And he says, in the beginning, I'm reading out New American Standard. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, I might have to fill in some of the gaps, because a lot of stuff I know a lot of people don't know. But the Lord has been quickening me on the language of the Spirit so we can know certain things. Now, in the language of the Spirit, word and fruit are interchangeable. Means the same thing. Word and fruit. Okay? So, what is fruit? Fruit is to give life to you. When you eat it, it's to give you life. It's food for you to eat, give life. So, when we read this in the language of the Spirit, it says, in the beginning was the Word. Now, right here, this word, he is referring all the way back to Genesis 1:1. All this that John is speaking right here in chapter 1 is that language of the Spirit. He is speaking it all in that language of the Spirit. So he's going all the way back to Genesis 1:1, where he's saying Christ is that very word. Okay? And what he's saying is, in the beginning was the Word. Or he could have said, in the beginning was the fruit. Okay? What is the fruit? The fruit is to give life. Because when you see in Genesis 1:2, you see darkness. And what is that darkness? The Bible, if you pull up your concordance, you'll find out that darkness is the very opposite of the light. The darkness was death, calamity, sorrow, grief, pain. It was all that was evil. So God spoke, let there be light. So he's saying Christ is that very word spoken, let there be. This is what he's saying. And it was the whole point was to give life. Because at this point in time, all it was darkness. So he's saying Christ is that very word, let there be. And the whole point was to be life to people. This is what he's saying. He is that fruit that gives life. Remember I said the word and fruit are interchangeable. You see the Lord use it quite a bit in this book of John, where the Lord is that fruit that gives life. He called himself the bread of life, the water of life, the tree of life. He is that fruit that gives life. Okay? When you communicate it in the language of the Spirit, all right, which is in dreams and visions, which Jesus spoke when he spoke in parables, all right. So he's saying that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things came into being through him, and apart from him, nothing came into being that has come into being. In him was life. Okay? So in that word that was spoken, that's what we're letting you see, that in that word that was spoken, let there be, the whole purpose for it to let there be was for life. Because in the darkness was nothing but death. So he is that word spoken to give life. Okay? He's that word spoken, let there be. And the whole point was for life. Okay? So he's saying in him was life. And that word spoken was life. Okay? And the life was the light of men. So he's taking that. He is that very God when God said, let there be light. That he is that light. He is that illumination of light. All right. And he says that light was the light. I'm sorry. And in him was life, and the life was the light of men. And it says, and the light shined in the darkness. Talking about that darkness of Genesis 1, that light shined in the darkness. And it said, and the darkness did not comprehend it. I don't like this in the New American Standard. I'm sorry, in the my Greek interlinear, it says that the darkness could not overtake it. Or some translations say it could not over wrestle it or wrestle it out. Could not. We're going to find out that he has been that light to rule. Okay? He is that light that was made to rule, where the darkness could not put it out. All right? And it says 6. This John 1:6. There came a man sent from God, whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify about the light. Remember, this light is going all the way back to Genesis 1:3. John has been talking to us this whole time in the language of the Spirit, and most people don't even realize it. Matter of fact, this whole book of John is spoken in that language, the language of the Spirit. If you take it literal, you're going to miss a whole lot that John is trying to express to you. Okay? Now, let me also go back to Genesis 1:1, when it says, in the beginning was the Word. And that word means logos, okay? Which means expression. So he's saying in the beginning was the expression, okay? He is that word that was expressed to us as life. God expressed himself to us in that word that gives life. This is how God, and you got to remember, all through this book, God is expressing himself to us on so many various levels. God wears so many hats, especially when you look at when he calls himself Jehovah, Jehovah Nisi, Jehovah Jireh. All these, God is saying that he is whatever we need him to be. He is that to us. He is our all in all. He is all these things. All right. The same way here, he is showing us that he is that life. All right. So he's expressing himself to us in that language by which we can understand that he is the light. Now, he's not referring to the physical light. He is talking about this word right here. Light means illumination. All right. It illuminates and it gives light. It gives life. All right. And we're going to find out what is the illumination of this light. And he's telling us it's Christ. All right. So, verse 6. Then he came, verse 7. He came as a witness to testify about the light. John the Baptist came testifying about the light, so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but he came to testify about the light. There was the true light, which coming into the world enlightened every man. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. This is letting us see he came into the world, and the world did not even know him. That's because they were not looking through those eyes of the Spirit. If you look at him in the regular natural eyes, you will miss the Lord. All right. He came to his own, and those who were his own did not receive him. Here they had all their Hebrew, they had all their Greek, and yet they did not see him. It's because they did not see him through the eyes of the Spirit. How many times did the Lord tell his people? He said, those who have an ear, let them hear what the Spirit say. And those who have eyes to see, let him see. Jesus is speaking in that language by which the Spirit communicates Christ to us. You cannot see his glory in the natural. You have to see it in that language which is communicated to us, which is through the language of dreams and visions, that even his own did not recognize him. Here they knew all this Hebrew and even, I would imagine, Greek, whatever, but they totally missed him. Verse 12. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become the children of God, even to those who believe in his name. Because that name brought forth light. All right? That's why. And it says, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of flesh, nor of the will of man, but God. This is letting us see that this spiritual birth is not of any man, not of any natural blood or any will of any man, but God. That's what this new birth is. It is the will of God. All this has been done because of the will of God, not of any own will of any other man, but God. All right. Verse 14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw His glory. And I tell you, you can't see His glory except through that language by which the Spirit communicates it to us. And we saw His glory. What is the glory? The glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. What is the glory? It is the light. That's the glory. And he said it was as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. What is the grace? Now we know grace is that unmerited favor. But what is the grace? Full of grace. The grace is for the life. This is the whole point we were talking about. The light is full of life. That's the grace of God, the unmerited favor, life, where in the darkness is nothing but full of death. There is all in the light of life. And he's saying it is full of grace, or full of this light that gives life. It's to the fullness. In the light, or in this grace that God has given us, this unmerited favor, or this knowledge, this glory of the light, is nothing but the fullness of life. And he said it is the truth, which is Christ. Christ is the truth. He is the fullness of the life, or he is the fullness of the light of life. And he said it is the truth. And this is why when Jesus was before Pilate, he said, I came to bear witness of the truth. And Pilate said, what is truth? Jesus shut right up. He shut right up. Because apparently it was not given to Pilate to know the truth. And Jesus told his wife came to Pilate and actually told him not to have no dealings with this righteous man. For I have suffered many things because of him in a dream. Now, how is it that she knew that he was a righteous man? It's because in the dream, that is how the Lord's glory is revealed. This is how she knew. It was revealed to her in a dream. And here Pilate had nothing. He had no knowledge of who he was. And Jesus told Pilate told him, don't you know, I have, the power to, to set you free. And Jesus told him, you will have no power over me except it was given from above. And he said, those who delivered me into your hands had the greatest sin. So there is no way that you can see the Lord except you see him through that language of which the Spirit communicates, which is in dreams and visions. This is why it goes all the way back with Peter, speaking up in Acts, quoting from Job, that this is what that is from, the Spirit of the Lord. All right? So, let's now go to Genesis and see this. So Genesis chapter 1. This is where John is getting all this from. All right. Genesis chapter 1. And it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, it should be just heaven. All right. Because God is dealing with, it says the heavens and the earth, but God is talking to us concerning the earth. All right. And this heavens that we currently know. All right. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. Remember when I said this darkness is? This the same darkness that was in John, where it could not wrestle out the light. All right? That was nothing but death, calamity, sorrow, pain. In other words, all that is evil. No life in it whatsoever. All right? And the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. And God said, let there be light. So he is that very word what God says, let there be. This is what John is letting you see. He's taking you all the way to the origin of the light. This is the glory by which the Lord is known for. This light that gives life, or this word, or remember I told you the word also means fruit in the language of dreams and visions. It is the fruit that gives life. Where all that you saw was in darkness, here he is that fruit that gives life. Okay? He says, and there was light. And there was light. And God saw, and God saw that the light was good. Number 2, God saw all that was in that light, that it is nothing but good. Nothing at all is evil. And that word where God said, let there be light. There is nothing evil at all in it. There is no fear at all in it. It is nothing but good. So if you're in the light, you should be expecting nothing but good happening to you. Because that's all that's in the light. Is that only that which is good. Verse 4. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. I want you to see how many times this quote is going to be mentioned. God separates the light from the darkness. Very important. You're going to see how many times this is actually quoted. God separated the light from the darkness. Now, you have to understand that in the language of the Spirit, he's not talking literal. God uses things that we know to express a spiritual meaning. All right. So he's not literally talking about the physical light, but he is talking about how he is that light that gives life. So he's using the light that shows everything that is good, that it is Christ. All right. And that he is that illumination that gives life. All right. That's what John was trying to let you see. All right. He's taking you all the way back that he is this light right here. Now, I know a lot of people like to think that God is actually talking about the physical earth right here. Unfortunately, I know it's what we've been taught. I understand that. But in the language by which the Lord communicates, he's just using physical things that we know of the earth to express spiritual truths. All right. So he's taking stuff that we know to give a spiritual meaning behind it. All right. So I know your mind is used to reading literal. However, to understand this, you must take your mind out of the literal and take it in the realm of the unimaginable. All right. In that language of dreams and visions of how the Lord communicates himself. It's the only way you can truly see his glory and actually not be deceived and able to see the sun and the moon and the stars. When the Lord says that the sun will be turned to darkness and the moon into blood and the stars fall from heaven before that great and terrible day, glorious day of the Lord. Because you can't see that naturally. It's only in the realm, the spirit, that you can see that. All right, so let's continue to read. All right, so let's drop down to verse 14, where he's getting more into this sun again. I mean, this light. All right, he said, then God said, let there be lights in the expansion of the heaven. Now, it says heavens, but we know he's talking about the heaven. All right, God's taking what we know to give spiritual meaning. So he says, let there be lights in the expansion of the heavens, or other words, what we know of these heavens. And what he's saying is, of the heavens to separate the day from the night. Oh, I'm sorry, up here, I should have actually went on a little further. So let's go back to 5 real quick. It said, and God called the light day. So go back to Genesis 1:5, where verse 4, he's saying God separated the light from the darkness. Verse 5, and God called the what? The light, he called the day. Very important. In this lesson, I'm not going to be able to get into the days. But here, it says he called the light, who is Christ, he called it day. So he called Christ the day. All right? And the darkness, he called night. All right? So he's not going to, he's not dealing with the giving us the clear definition what the night is exactly, but we will find out as we continue to read. In the evening, it said, and there was evening and there was morning one day. So what we just learned there was he called this light, which we know is Christ, he called him day. He called the light day. So you got to understand when he goes through the scriptures and he's talking about days, calculating other days, he's talking about the days of his glory to come. All right. And then, so I just want you to keep that little nugget down. Like I said, I'm not going to get into the counting and the calculating of the days. All right, here. But I'm just trying to show you, just throw a little nugget at you. So let's continue to read. Now let's go back to verse 14. It says, then God said, let there be lights in the expansion of the heavens to separate the day from the night. There's another sign where he's separating that day and night again. All right, another one. And he's saying, let there be lights in the expansion. And what do you think he's talking about? Let these lights be in expansion. What do you think he's talking about? This is right now, he's great describing the sun and the moon. Now, he's not talking about that they're physically the sun and the moon, where he's using physical things that you know to bring forth spiritual truths. All right. So he says, let there be lights in the expansion of the heavens to separate the day from the night. Constantly be separated. The knowledge of the light and the knowledge of the darkness, they are to be separated. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years and let them be for lights in the expansion of the heavens, to give light onto earth. So these lights that he made in the heavens was to give light on the earth. Now you have to understand, in the language of the Spirit, earth always refers to the believers or to the saints, to God's people. So he's saying these, and the light always means illumination. Okay? When it's referring to the light, referring to lights, is referring to illumination. So the lights that he made in the heaven was to be illumination to believers. Believers only. He's only talking about believers. He's not talking about to the world or the wicked, because he's speaking this in prophetic. None of the wicked will understand this. It's only to the believers. All right? So the light was to those who are believers. It's the believers that inherits the earth. God made the earth to be inherited by the saints. Okay? And it was so. Here we go. Verse 16. God made two great lights. The greater light to govern or rule the day, and the lesser light to govern or rule the night. And he made the stars also. And God placed them in the expansion of the heavens to give light on the earth. So he placed this two great lights, the sun and the moon, which was to be illumination for the saints. All right, that's what the earth is symbolic of in the language of the Spirit, of the saints. All right. So he says they were to give light to the saints. These two great lights. They are not physically the light, they are in the symbolic form. Okay? Which Christ is the light, and the sun is what he's using to show signs of the light. All right? The earth, or the night, or the moon, I should say, was to show signs, or to give the signs of the darkness. Who you think governs or rules that's symbolic of the darkness? It is the wicked one. All right? He is the one that is, if you want to call, the door to the darkness. He is the one that leads men to the darkness. Okay? These and they both give light to believers. Not the world, to the saints. To the world of the saints, or the world of the believers. All right? That's what they do. All right? These two great lights. All right? And they are to be separated. Here you go again. They are to be separated. The knowledge of the light and the knowledge of the darkness. You don't go preaching the light. I was like, you don't go preaching the message of the darkness to those who are in the light. You're actually spiritually killing them. All right. So you have to know how to rightly divide the word of truth. And both of them are truth now. The knowledge of the darkness is truth, and the knowledge of the light is truth. But the light is the greater light that rules. And we saw that the darkness could not out-wrestle the light. All right? That's what John was saying. All right? Couldn't put it out. Verse 17, and God placed them in the expansion of the heavens to give light on the earth. And when I said the earth is that world of the believers, it's symbolic of the believers. So these two lights were to give illumination to the believers, to the saints. To govern the day, here we go, to govern the day and to govern the night. and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. So, very quickly, this light is the knowledge and the thoughts and plans of Christ. It's the knowledge of the light, which we call day. And in the darkness is the revelation and the knowledge of the wicked one, his thoughts, his schemes, his plans. And God made them both to be illumination for the saints, for the earth, who is symbolic of the saints. All right? That's what these lights are for. Not for everybody in the world. It's only for the world of the saints and the believers. Okay? This is how it reads in the language of the Spirit. All right? Now, I'm ready to show you right now that God did not start showing these signs in the heavens until after Christ had died. The signs of the heaven were not displayed until after Christ had died and risen from the dead. I'm ready to show you that right now. So if we go to Luke, let's go to Luke chapter 21. So here we are in Luke chapter 21. And let's go to verse 10. All right. So this is his disciples, and the Lord grade give them some serious insight concerning the signs of the heavens. All right. He really gives some serious insight. All right, on these signs of heaven. So let's go see what the Lord is saying. Then he says, verse 10, then he continued to say to them, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be great earthquakes in various places, plagues and famine, and there will be terror and great signs from heaven. And great signs from heaven. Here we go. But, listen very closely now. But, before all these things, they will lay their hands on you and will persecute you, delivering you to the synagogues and prisons, bringing you before kings and governors for my name's sake. Now, are you hearing this? He's saying in verse 10, he said, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be great earthquakes, and in various places plagues and famines, and there will be terror and great signs from heaven. But before all these things, they will lay their hands on you. Talking about his disciples now. They will lay their hands on you. He said, before all those things, they're going to lay their hands on you. Talking about his disciples. Those pillars of the church. And they will lay their hands on you and will persecute you, delivering you to the synagogues and prisons, bringing you before kings and governors for my name's sake. It will lead to an opportunity for your testimony. So some So make up in your mind not to prepare beforehand to defend yourselves. For I will give you utterance and wisdom, which none of the opponents will be able to resist or refute. But you will be betrayed even by parents and brethren and relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death. And John's and Matthew's account, he said they will lay hands on you and kill you. So some of them was to be put to death. Well, we don't all of them was to put to death. God only left one. He left one for a particular purpose. And I'm going to show you what that purpose was. And you will be hated by all because of my name. Because of my name. Yet not a hair of your head will perish. By your endurance, you will gain your lives. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then recognize that her desolation is near. So he's saying that he's telling them they're going to live to see Jerusalem being overthrown in 70 AD. Many of them did live to see this very prophecy fulfilled in 70 AD. All right. So this is amazing. The Lord is dead on point. This has had to been a serious elimination to them that they knew what to do at that time. All right. Then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains, and those who are in the midst of the city must leave, and those who are in the country must not enter the city, because these are the days of vengeance, so that all things which are written will be fulfilled. Woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, for there will be great distress upon the land and wrath to this people, and they will fall by the edge of the sword and will be led captives into all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So I read all that, let you see that these disciples a lot of them were to live to see the actual 70 AD prophecy fulfilled. But the Lord told them in the beginning, but before these things, these signs that was to come from heaven, that they will lay their hands on you and kill you. That's the key point I wanted you to see from this. So the signs of heaven were not to be seen until after they were dead and gone. Except for one was kept alive to show us the signs from heaven. Man, our God is great. Now, who is this one? No other than John. He is the one. So let's go to Revelations chapter 4. Now, this has already have extended to almost an hour, so I'm going to cut it short and just show you one quick verse. John is on the Isle of Patmos, and for the revelation of Jesus Christ, because of the testimonies of Jesus Christ, he was on this Isle of Patmos. He was pretty much banished because they tried many ways to try to kill him, which was to no success. So they pretty much banished him. The nations pretty much banished him to this Isle of Patmos. Okay. So Revelation chapter 4, after John sees the revelation in chapter 1. And what was that revelation? That Jesus is he that was, and that he is, Jesus is he that is, and that was, and that is to come, the Almighty. And that he is judge, that he's also judge and the executor of the judgment. If you want to see that, I break that down in the signs of the sun. Okay, that illumination what the sun gives. All right. That was in chapter 1. Then he gave the messages to the churches. And remember, after each one of those messages to the church, notice that the Lord said, he that has an ear to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the church. So he's letting you know what he is telling them, that he's only communicating in that language by which the Spirit communicated. And that is in that language of dreams and visions, which is the same language that parables are spoken in. This is the language of the Spirit that he speaks. And if you don't know that language, it's very well possible you could be deceived. Because the thoughts and plans of God are only expressed in that language by which the Spirit communicates. All right, so he's on the Isle of Patmos. Verse 4. And it says, after these things, now, after the things that he just shown, the messages to the churches, now God is showing them something. Listen what it says. After these things, I look and behold a door standing open in heaven. All this time, we sitting there thinking that the actual physical sun, moon, and stars are what we are to navigate and give us the direction to the plots, to the plans and strategies of God. And John saying right here, after these things that he's showing those things, the chapter 1, 2, and 3, he said, after this, now a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was like the sound of a trumpet speaking with me, said, come up here, and I will show you what must take place after these things. What I'm trying to let you see, the signs of the heavens is here in the book of Revelation. The Lord, now, I'm going to stop here, but I'm going to let you go and you chart. I'm going to lay out some more messages and show you what are the Lord actually lays down. What are the signs of the sun? What are the signs of the moon? And what are the messages that the star gives? All right. John said a door. It's like when Jesus said, I am the door to the way to God. I am the door to the shepherdfold. All right. He said he is that door. It's the same way here. He showed John a vision. And he said, after these things, I looked and behold, a door was open. And here it is. When he says a door was open, meaning he's going to show him revelation that he has never seen before. He is that door into the heavens that God is giving John to give his people of the revelation of the sun, the moon, and the stars. He is that God. The Lord is giving John the revelation of the things of the signs from heaven. This book of Revelation is the signs from heaven. That's why I said, and it was open. Heaven was open, a door. At this point in time, there was no door open for us to see the signs of heaven. And the door now is open, which is the book of Revelation, for us to see the signs. John saw the door, the heavens open, which is now the revelation of the signs of heaven. So hopefully this has been a blessing. Check out part 2, the signs of the sun. I think you're going to be blessed what the Lord has revealed to me to show illumination as we further on into these things. So hopefully that this has been a blessing.